Hi, I'm Matthew Ayala. I'm a disabled Navy veteran. I'm a mortgage lender. Before that, I was a field engineer, and before that, a radar technician in the military. This 4th of July, I want to talk about what the American dream means to me. My father's a first generation immigrant. I was raised in a single family household where my mom raised me and my younger brother on Social Security. I've saved and invested since I was 18, joined the military also at age 18, promoted to E5 before my 21st birthday, went to rehab and tried ending it all at 22, got out of the Navy and got a kick-ass engineering job, made six figures and have had a six-figure net worth ever since, bought a house at 23, hurt my back and finally got to where I am today and became a mortgage lender. By all means, I feel like I've lived and am still living the American dream. And that is the same American dream that I fought for when I started in the military. Before I begin, I want you to comment whether you believe in the American dream, and if you do, what the American dream truly means to you. I was born in New York, raised in the aftermath of 9/11. My dad came to this country in the late 70s or early 80s. Truth be told, I can't remember exactly when he said it was at the time. As a son of an immigrant in a very ethnic neighborhood, identity was integral to me. In my youth, when someone had asked me what I was, I would say Hispanic. Now, when people ask me the same question, I tell them I'm American. And I'm not afraid, nor am I ashamed of that. I moved to Florida when I was 12. A few months later, my dad had left. After that, she raised me, both me and my brother, on just Social Security, and honestly, my mom did an awesome job. When I got to high school, I took a class called JROTC, or the Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps. It teaches you stuff about leadership, athleticism, survival skills, and the military. I was part of some clubs, but was on the fence about actually joining the military. Then my grandfather, who had served in the army during the Korean War, passed away. I always looked up to him as a child, and with 9/11 being in the back of my mind as a kid who grew up in New York, joining the military felt natural. So I ended up joining the United States Navy at 18. It hadn't even been 2 weeks since I had graduated from high school. I was shipped off to boot camp for 2 months where they shaved my head, yelled at me, and made me run around a lot. I got out of boot camp and went through apprentice technical training to become a radar technician and operator, and got to the fleet to serve my country and do a good job. Luckily for me, I thoroughly enjoyed my job, at least in theory. I've always had an aptitude for mathematics and learning how things worked on a microscopic level, even at a young age. I would frequently take apart the toys or electronics I had and take a peek inside. I loved learning, and I still do, especially when problem solving and numbers are involved. Funnily enough, that's how I ended up getting into my career fields in the Navy, field engineering, and into the mortgage industry where I am today. When I served in the military, I took it seriously. I studied well for my advancement exam and studied for months, and included the technical aspects of my job, such as what certain electronic components like capacitors and inductors did, how they tied into what a circuit does on a broader picture, like what a capacitor does in a power supply, radar theory, and some radar specific stuff like frequencies, how the radar computer system and software all communicated with each other, and so on and so forth. Back in my day, in order to advance past the rank of E4, which I was at the time, to E5 and beyond, you had to take an advancement exam, which was factored in with your performance evaluation. I, just arriving at the ship at that point, had gotten what is considered a welcome aboard P, which is just your standard evaluation. Yet I studied so hard that when I took this test, I scored in the 99th percentile, and there are plenty of smart people in my rating or job. I scored so well, in fact, that I overcame the obstacle of the middling evaluation and made it to E5 and put on rank in about 2 years, which was considered very fast for my rating in the Navy. There was a problem, and I overcame that obstacle. I spent a good majority of my military service in San Diego on deployment. I did two back-to-back deployments during the pandemic in which port visits were limited to Bureau on the Pier in Guam. Of course, with my luck, I was underage for most of them, but I did get to enjoy my time not in a floating metal death box, as I was able to get my up-age friends to sneak me some beers. There was a problem and I overcame that obstacle. Starting to see a pattern here. When I got back, I was eligible for my housing allowance, which was about 2,300 bucks a month. So what I did was I rented an apartment off base for 1,800 a month. It was an 800 square foot, two-bed apartment in a rough part of town. Didn't even have air conditioning. I got a two-bedroom apartment on purpose. I got a roommate and went half and half on rent and utilities, so I was able to pocket some extra money and ended up saving that and ended up buying a house later. I was able to make a sacrifice, in this case, my privacy, and in return, I was able to save some more money. I was very frugal, and I still do consider myself to be frugal. Not cheap, but frugal. I don't spend money where and when I don't need to. It sounds simple, but when you talk to enough people and look at their bank statements every day like I do, you'll see that's not very common anymore. I bought a 2006 Honda Accord all cash for 8,500 bucks. Before then, I was commuting to work every day by walking and taking the trolley. I decided to buy the car all cash because I had enough money saved for it and I didn't want to pay a car loan every month. My time in the military wasn't peachy to say the least. I want to make it clear I'm not trying to dump all my problems with you, nor give you, the viewer, a sob story. I don't want you to throw a pity party for me. I just want to bring context for the situation I was going through in the military. Around the time I had graduated from C school, which is radar specific training for the platform and radar you're going to be working on, a guy I was in C school with died in a motorcycle accident. I didn't know the guy that well. I said hi to him a few times, but that was the extent of it. There was another incident on my first deployment. There was a guy who tried killing himself while we were in the middle of the ocean doing a gun shoot. Luckily, he wasn't shot, and after man overboard was called, we recovered him alive after him being in the water for 19 minutes. I know he's alive today. I just don't know exactly what happened to him after that. Then there was a guy on my second deployment who fell overboard from the aircraft carrier we were escorting, the USS Theodore Roosevelt. It was about 8 or 8:30 in the morning. There was a hazy gray mist outside and not much sunlight. Apparently, when he fell overboard, he was wearing a gray jersey too, so that didn't really help. He worked on the flight deck and fell overboard. We did recover him. His name was Ethan Goolsby. More recently, on April 1st, Stephen Manning, my air defense officer, who I served with and stood watch with in CIC on the Bunker Hill, died of cancer. I cracked quite a few jokes with him, passing him in the P-ways or hallways of the ship, and on watch. He's what us sailors would call a Mustang, which was an officer that was prior enlisted. We, as Blue Jackets or the enlisted guys in the ship, would respect the Mustangs more because they were in our shoes at one point. They were an officer that at one point did the dirty work like me and the other sailors did. They stood arm watches in the blazing sun, the freezing cold, just like we did. I gave them a bit more respect because they were usually a lot more humble and understanding than other officers were. Overall, Steve was a great guy. He was fighting cancer for years until he couldn't fight anymore, and I think about that every day. He died young, and I think about the legacy I want to leave for my family when I leave this world. The ultimate irony of all this is I know more people that were killed doing their job while they were in the military than by the enemies we swore to defeat. And during my second deployment, I hurt my back carrying a huge pipe or a valve. I can't remember exactly what it was, down the stairs to an engineering space that I worked in and had equipment in. To all my Navy guys, I was one of the only topsiders most engineers ever saw. The engineering department on ships are all full of sharp guys who work hard, and I respect the hell out of them. I hurt my back and I had a lot of small mobility issues that would compound over time, but I didn't really tell anyone because I didn't want to get kicked out of the military. Because of that, and also other reasons too, I got depressed at work. I wouldn't say my leadership was in its totality all good nor bad. Some of the leaders in my department were good and taught me how to lead the men and women I work with, and some taught me what not to do. I worked long days where I'd sometimes work 10 or 11 hours a day, plenty of times where equipment had casualties, and I stayed plenty of weekends too, working those. Every 6 days, I stood what is called duty. To explain duty to someone that's not familiar with the military, imagine that every 4 to 6 days, you weren't allowed to leave your office after clocking in, and that goes on for an entire day. Not only were you expected to work your normal 8-hour workday, you had trainings, musters, working parties, and if there was a casualty such as fire, flooding, or a gunfight on the ship, another ship, or on base, you were part of the response team. Also, sometime that day, it could be in the morning, could be at 2 a.m., you were expected to stand a 4 or 5 hour watch. Now, what watch you ended up standing depended on what your rate or job you had, but most of the time you stood armed, outfitted with a heavy bulletproof vest, a handgun, handcuffs, OC spray, and sometimes an M4. Over time, it caught up to me. I felt soulless and I felt helpless. The only reprieve that I could find would be through alcohol. I had a roommate at the time who worked in the same work center that I did, so I would give him rides to work. Over time, he, as well as everyone else in my work center division in life, had noticed how miserable and, quite frankly, pathetic I had become. Someone had anonymously recommended me to my ship's DAPA, or Drug and Alcohol Program Advisor. What followed was me going to a 35-day inpatient rehab in the military. I didn't consider myself an addict. I still don't, which is dangerous to say to other alcoholics or people that have had substance issues. With the troubling circumstances in my personal and work life combined with a severe issue with my mentality where I just gave up on life, felt like I had no way out. I got out of rehab in June, and less than a month later, I tried to kill myself. Well, I wasn't successful as you can see, and that's why you're seeing this video today. Killing yourself is a coward's way out, and I am firm on that stance. Most, if not all of you, have mothers, fathers, siblings, cousins, grandparents, maybe even children. It took me imagining what my reaction to one of my family members doing that to me until I finally realized the error in my ways, not just with killing myself, but with my entire mentality. I had to make a change and I had to do it soon. I got out of the military and I was unemployed for 2 months until I got my job as a field engineer. And in the meantime, I drove for Uber Eats. Since I've left the military, I feel more patriotic. My time away from being in the military has given me time to dwell and process what happened in the military, what I did in the military, and what I could have done better in the military. When people ask me if I would do it all again, I hesitate a bit. I think about the direction that this country is going in, where we are slowly losing our identity and our culture. Our purchasing power is being eroded in an involuntary transfer of wealth. But I always say yes because I still believe in the American dream. The American dream is less attainable every single day. That is true, but it is still attainable. This is a belief I was willing to die for, and I'm still willing to die for it. After the military, I got a job as a field engineer. Due to my technical aptitude and my time in the military, they were more than happy to extend me an offer at a pretty good salary. I was in charge of fixing the entire West Coast corrugators, or machines that make cardboard, as well as some other territories too. If you ever talk to a guy in the industry, he'll call it corrugated fiberboard or corrugated. Well, I call it cardboard. I don't care. I got to travel all across the United States. I worked the same long hours I did in the military, but it was nice to not be in the middle of the ocean for a change. And unlike the military, it paid more and I could just quit if I wanted to. Eventually, the back issues I had in the military caught up to me and caused me to experience more back problems. And I eventually left that job for something less physically strenuous, and that's how I got into mortgage lending. While I was working as a field engineer, I reconnected with a chief I served with in the military. He recently become a real estate agent, and I was interested in buying a home now that I had left the Navy. I'd saved a lot of money to buy a home, and a few months later, I had ended up buying a really nice house in San Diego. I was less than half the age my mom was when she bought her home. And at age 23, I'd finally felt like I had lived the American dream. In fact, it inspired me to become a mortgage lender. The reason I initially chose being a mortgage lender is because I knew so many real estate agents and I did not want to compete with them. I wanted to work with them. One thing I had found out much too late in the licensing process to become a mortgage lender was how business was earned, and I hesitate to call it earned. Real estate agents and mortgage lenders interact a lot since most people buying homes don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars in many markets to buy homes all cash. Real estate agents also don't have the best reputation. I knew this before I became a mortgage lender and hope to educate veterans on how to identify people they should and should not work with. Many real estate agents are, unfortunately, truly out there for the commission and the commission only, and don't care about the people they work with. And that is why I only choose to work with great and reputable agents. The way most loan officers get their business is by begging real estate agents for business. They talk about their low rates, how fast they can close, how efficient their systems are, and whatnot. Call it what you want. I call it kissing ass. And that doesn't work for me. I built a business model where instead of buyers getting in front of real estate agents, they get in front of me, the loan officer, instead on my Facebook and my YouTube channel. In some cases, a real estate agent steers them to a lender that pays for their leads, which is very common lenders to pay for, even if sometimes they end up violating a federal law against kickbacks called RESPA. One particular incident happened with a Marine Corps veteran and agent in San Diego that I've met a few times in person. He had begged me to represent one of the people I served with in the military that I had pre-approved and behind my back referred him to a lender, another lender that was paying for his Zillow leads. These are the types of agents that backstab that I try and warn the veterans I work with about. Last month, I was slated to help five families with their financing. I had four VA purchases and an investment refinance with a total of about $1.2 million in volume. Early in the month, me and my entire branch were laid off because we didn't make enough money. I and many others brokered all my loans instead of using the retail warehouse lines because although I would make less compensation, it meant the veterans I would work with got a significantly better deal. Our entire mortgage branch of 13 or 14 people got fired because we save the veterans and other families we work with a lot of money compared to our company's retail warehouse rates. Luckily, I was able to pivot, but I lost most of the families I worked with after I suddenly stopped responding to my work email that I had no access to, and I lost a lot of my momentum too. While I was lucky enough to have money saved up to cushion the blow, I feel for the others at the branch that got laid off. They had families to take care of, and as do I. By now, I hope you'll see a common theme here: overcoming adversity and making trade-offs or opportunity cost. Let me speak about overcoming adversity first. When something bad happens to me, I will complain about it, but I will find a way to get around it as well. This feeling of helplessness that my generation, Gen Z, has is, I feel, self-inflicted. In very few instances are you actually powerless to do anything. There's some variables that are out of your control, and in life there are things that will always be out of your control. It is your responsibility to change what you can and accept what you cannot, and hopefully have the wisdom to know the difference. I learned that from AA, by the way, when I went. And in life, there is always a trade-off to make. At age 18, I had to weigh out the opportunity cost of joining the military versus going to college, and I made the correct choice. I also had to weigh the opportunity cost of partying with my friends that I served with every weekend, eating out whenever I wanted to, buying flashy watches, fancy clothes, a Camaro, and ultimately I bought and did none of those things. Would I be a lot cooler while I was younger? Sure, but that wouldn't have got me where I was today. In spite of my circumstances and because of my hard work, my will to overcome obstacles, and understanding opportunity costs and what trade-offs I should make, I live the same American dream that I fought for others to live. I have accomplished a lot in my young age, and I am proud to talk about my accomplishments, but I'm also equally proud to openly talk about my failures. I was the first person in my immediate family to graduate high school, the first person in my immediate family to join the military, the first person in my immediate family to attend college. Got a killer job as a field engineer outside the military, bought a home at less than half the age my mother did, became a loan officer after that, and now I get to help and teach others like me how to live the American dream. And I enjoy every minute of it. There will never be a time where you will not face challenges or face adversity. It takes both grit and will to overcome those challenges and that adversity. If you apply these principles throughout your entire life, you'll come out all right. Thank you for staying and watching the entire video. If you found what I said today thought-provoking and really struck a chord with you, I would really appreciate it if you like and subscribe to this channel. What does the American dream mean to you? Let me know in the comments. Once again, I am Matthew Ayala, U.S. Navy veteran and mortgage lender and American. Have a great day, and may God hold you in the palm of his hands.